All right. It is currently 1:53 in the morning. All right. And I was going to wait to make this kind of video. I was going to write out a script for it. But for whatever reason, I'm feeling the vibes. I'm feeling the shits. I was also going to try to, order a tripod to put my phone on as I make these videos. But that's going to have to wait also. So we're just going to makeshift this bitch right here. Throw this bitch right here. Not sure what I'm going to title this video yet. You're just going to have to bear with me and you'll see the title on the video. All right. So let's see. Let's see. Get the chair out of the frame. Perfect. Okay, welcome in to whatever the fuck this is. Okay, I'm really not sure what I'm gonna call it yet. But this is how everything works, right? And I hope that in explaining this to you, that you will now understand reality, understand the point of a lot of esoteric and spiritual teaching, and understand what it is to be enlightened, right? Because I think there's a lot of misconceptions, there's a lot of misunderstanding, and there is a lot of, quite frankly, bullshit. There's a whole bunch of fake bullshit all over the place due to ignorance and misunderstanding and just people being people, like we're human. That's we're gonna be stupid and ignorant and dumb. It's part of our nature, which I'm gonna get into. So I'll call it the nature of existence, the nature of presence. Okay. I kind of came to this equation in a very unorthodox way. So I have spent a couple little times messing with my subconscious brain. And what I say by messing with my subconscious brain is forsaking any logic, for lack of a better term. Now, I don't recommend doing this. I actually advise against doing this. I don't think it's healthy. Well, let me take that back. It's not that I don't think it's healthy, but if your subconscious brain has a bunch of really fucked up programming, like mine did, you are going to enter what some people call spiritual psychosis, religious psychosis, whatever you want to call it. Or that's at least how it was in my experience, Now, I've gotten a little bit better at, I'm going to call it living subconsciously, but living without seeing and hearing without listening. That's how I'll call it, and I can sound all fancy and esoteric. Ooh, I'm so esoteric. So esoteric. I need to spend less time on the internet. Anyway, here we go. Here goes nothing. So, first things first. I want to direct your attention to this diagram right here, okay? This is an algebraic equation without numbers. It's symbols, and I'm going to explain the symbols to my best of my abilities. And then I'll kind of explain how I got here. Actually, fuck it. I'm not going to explain how I got here. You can just trust that I got here via my own experience. First things first. The Y represents God. The Y represents source. The Y represents Genesis, beginning. There's been a lot of descriptors as to what source is, right? I'm not gonna sit here and say, this is what source is, because all I'll be able to tell you is what I believe and what I know, right? And what I believe and what I know isn't everything. It is simply just that, what I believe and what I know. And you can take with it and do what you want, okay? This isn't the truth. This isn't a lie. This is my opinion, all right? This is my observation. But to me, the Y represents God. And you'll notice there's the numbers 3, 6, and 9. And I put these numbers there because it helps give us kind of landmarks, right? It's a good way of kind of identifying the energy, identifying the process by putting a numeric descriptor, a numeric tag on the idea. So I can explain the idea much more concisely later on. So back to what we were doing. The Y represents source. The circle, which is, honestly, it's the Ouroboros. I can't fucking speak. It's the Ouroboros. It's the death and rebirth cycle, right? So this is a fraction, all right? Numerator, denominator, okay? Numerator and denominator. The numerator is the 6, the Ouroboros, the Satan, the adversary. The Y is God, Yahweh, Yahuwah. I don't give a fuck what you call it. Source, the divine. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. Language is a Euclidean descriptor of reality, which reality is not made up of language. If it was, we'd be adding words instead of numbers. So, again, Satan, God. Now, I feel like I gotta make this clarification. But just because Satan is over God in the fraction does not mean that I'm worshiping Satan. It does not mean anything, all right? You know, like the occultists were like, oh, Lucifer is the light bearer, right? Or like the Baphomet. And it's like, okay, I haven't looked into all that shit enough to say something, but no, I don't think that, I think that they're looking at it backwards, quite frankly. Maybe I'm looking at it backwards. God will know, right? We're all gonna go meet the same God, so does it really fucking matter what I believe as long as I'm praising God? Anyway, philosophy is fun. So, you have the culmination of God and Satan, right? And you'll hear people talk about spiritual warfare, or the spiritual war, or God and Satan, right? Fighting each other, this eternal cosmic battle between the forces of good and evil. Newsflash. God didn't create good and evil, we did. Okay, I'm not a biblical scholar, right? Again, I'm 22. I have a high school diploma. I spend too much time on the internet. I read too much and I talk too much. That's the basis of all of these conclusions. So again, take it with a grain of salt. But spiritual warfare, right? I got off track. I was gonna say Genesis. If you eat the apple, you'll be like the gods. You'll be like God, and you'll know the knowledge of good and evil, right? So the way I have explained, and I'm gonna get to the third part in a second, but the way that I have described this in the most neutral term possible, because I want the idea to get across to everybody, is source. All right, so what we're actually gonna do is we're gonna call it even more neutral terms. Get the New Age Jews out of there. Get the biblical Jews out of there. And we're gonna call it we're gonna do very simple mathematics here. All right, cause, effect, outcome. All right, can we all agree that that happens, okay? Whether you're Christian, atheist, Muslim, agnostic, fucking Gnostic, it doesn't matter, okay? Cause, effect, outcome. All right, you got me? You following me? The cause is the creator. The effect is sin, all right? To use a biblical term. The effect is the ego, is consciousness, individual consciousness, all right? So you got me so far, right? I got a picture drawn out for you right here using the sun, all right? Because the sun has been used in multiple different cultures to describe or to symbolize God or to symbolize this source energy, right? So the sun, and like you've all seen fucking what's that goddamn band called? What's that fucking band called with the light and the prism and the rainbow that comes out of it? That's all that is, right? But it's just like, the 9, 6, and the 3 that we're talking about. So cause is creation. Cause is the source of all of this, right? You got your effect. The effect is conscious interaction. The Ouroboros, death and rebirth. Low entropy, expansion into high entropy, retraction back to low entropy to meet at the singularity. So like the cycle of the Ouroboros is singularity, expansion into high entropy, full expression, actualization. From actualization, retracting back down into low entropy, back to the singularity. That's the death and rebirth cycle. You can pinpoint more points and stops on it. I'm not going to, because there's entire religions that did that already. And if you want to go learn about that, go study the samsara. That will give you all of that stuff, right? So, source filtered through ego equals us. Hello. That's me. And that's you, right? Outcome. Cause, effect, outcome. Okay? Source, refraction, separation, presence, humanity. Okay? So here's the thing. The whole teaching is all about being present. To be here. To be right now. To be right now. When God introduced himself to Moses at the burning bush, he said, Ehye aser ehye, which I still don't know what aser means. I've seen it so many different ways, but it's I am what I am. I am who I am. I am as I am, right? So what does that mean? When God introduced himself to Moses, who was essentially the chosen one at that point, right? He allegedly wrote the entirety of the Torah, right? Or not the entirety of the Torah, I'm sorry. The first section of the Torah, the first 5 books, which is the Old Testament. But he said, I am who I am. And then when Moses was like, what do I tell my people your name is? It's Yahweh, right? And there's certain demographics that are going to say, it's not Yahweh, it's this, it's that, it's that. I don't fucking care. All right, the point's still the same. It all transliterates into presence. Yahweh means he is. He is. Right? Faith through him. We'll get to that later. But Yahweh, right? He is. Eke, I am. I am who I am. I am what I am. So what God told Moses, in my interpretation, is I am cosmic presence. I am eternal presence. I am the beginning and I am the end. I am the Alpha and the Omega. Right? What takes you away from presence? The answer is anything to do with the ego, anything to do with the self, right? If you go read, hold on, let me go grab the text real quick, and I'll show you. Oh, all right. So we're in right now Galatians chapter 5, verse 16 is where I'm about to read from. I'll throw it up on the screen right here so you can read along with me. But it says, I say then, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. Now, what does lust mean? Lust means willful desire, desire outside of God's will, right? A strong desire, a very strong desire, almost overwhelming desire. So, desire of the flesh, the lust of the flesh, the desire of the flesh, the desire of the ego, the desire of the personal will. Not the will of God, but the personal will. For the flesh lusts against the Spirit. Who else do we know goes against the Spirit? Satan, right? In the book of Job, it actually tells us about that. I'm not going to quote it exactly unless I can find Actually, I'll just take a second to find the passage. Hold on. Job. Where are you, Job? There you are. All right. So we're in Job, chapter 1, verse 6. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. And the Lord said to Satan, from where do you come? So Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro on the earth, from walking back and forth on it. Okay? So Satan, the term Satan, when it is translated from English back to Hebrew, biblical Hebrew, I believe. I think it's biblical Hebrew. There's a whole bunch of different Hebrews. I don't know. I'm an American, bro. I'm an American. I speak English. I'm learning this the best I can. But it means adversary or opponent. So back to Galatians before I get too off track with what we're talking about. Let me find Galatians again. And Galatians, just a little bit of lore behind that. It's one of the Apostle Paul's letters to the Galatians. And he was telling them, giving them kind of Christ's wish for them, for lack of a better term. For the flesh lusts against the Spirit. So we're back in Galatians chapter 5, verse 17 now. For the flesh lusts against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary to one another, so that you do not do the things that you wish. But if you are led by the Spirit, hold on, we got to reread this. Verse 17. For the flesh lusts against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary to one another, so that you do not do the things that you wish. But if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. So, all right. Going into verse 19, which is, this part is the whole reason I bring this up. I'm not going to break out in apologetics for this verse, these verses in Galatians. I give you a little bit of a breakdown there. I'm not going to get into verse 18, but if you are led by the Spirit, you are not under the law. Because that, I don't know. I don't fucking know what that means. I'm not going to pretend like I do. But verse 19, now the works of the flesh are evident, which are adultery, fornication, uncleanliness, lewdness, idolatry, sorcery, hatred, contentions, jealousies, outbursts of wrath, selfish ambitions, don't know how to pronounce that word, not going to pretend like I do. Heresies, envy, murders, drunkenness, revelries, and the like, of which I tell you beforehand, just as I also told you in time past, that those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. So what do all of those things stem from? The ego. Satan. Okay? But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such there is no law. And those who are Christ's have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking one another, envying one another. Point being, I mean, I really and truly think that passage kind of, iterates the point that I'm making. This is a human. This symbol right here represents a human. What is a human made up of? God and the devil. Holiness and sin. Right? That's the whole point of the teachings of Jesus Christ. Is you as a human will never be good enough for God. Never. Because as a human, you were born into sin. Therefore, from the jump, you were fucked. Give me 1 second. I was born into sin. Shit, hold on, let me on camera. I was born into sin. I be sinning every day still. Not because I want to, but because I'm human. You know? It's the whole point about having faith in Jesus. Jesus, and I'm not going to get into it in this video. And I'm not going to claim to know everything. But the whole point of Jesus is because you were never good enough for God, God became human and sacrificed every moment of his human life. So you could be with God every moment of yours. Because once sin entered into the world, and this is just a theory for me, but I believe sin entered the world when the first conscious awareness became outside of the cosmic consciousness, right? So if we understand that, I want to try to connect a lot of things real quick. And this video is going to get fucking long, and you're going to have to get the fuck over it. So if we understand, I'm gonna break this down one more time. We have source that is filtered through separation, which gives birth to humanity. God separated into multiple different humans. Okay? God could not experience himself subjectively without separation, without an opposition, without an adversary. Okay? much as you cannot experience God without the existence of Satan. Because if an adversary did not exist, you would not be you. We would all be God, which we are. But we are not the creator. We are a piece of the creator. We are the creation. So let's move on. Are you familiar with chakra systems? I'm gonna pop a picture up right here of chakra systems, right? Whole gist about chakra systems. And again, don't know everything about these things, but the chakra system, you've got 7 main chakras, right? I think in Buddhism it's 5, in Hinduism it's 7. But you got the 7 major chakras, that's how I know them, and we're gonna go with that, because that's how I know them. Again, subjective opinion, not truth, all right? So, the lowest chakra is your root chakra, and it goes all the way up to your crown chakra. The whole point is, if you open up all your chakra points, you reach enlightenment, right? Or I forget what they call it in Hinduism, so please forgive me for using the improper terms. But you reach nirvana, you reach enlightenment, you reach God, right? Orthodox Christianity has a term called theosis. And it's through faith and through works. You become God. Doesn't that sound similar to you? So we got the 7 chakras, right? And I drew out this picture right here. And all these pictures on the whiteboard, I'll take pictures of and post them as I'm talking about it and breaking them down like I did the last video. But this also, notice I've color-coded everything too. So this also is the same thing as this, okay? It's just on a different dimension, right? It's looking at it at a different angle, I should say, I'm sorry. So the first one with the sun, that is putting it in a very 2-dimensional explanation. That's a very elementary understanding of these concepts I'm explaining to you. All right? Highest dimension, right here, where it says highest dimension, lowest dimension, crown chakra, heaven, hell, root chakra. I took this equation and extrapolated it up. So instead of it just being linear on 1-dimensional plane, it is now multidimensional. Okay? In the sense that up and down represents your body, right? But it also represents your DNA. Notice the double helix. It also represents God and Satan's relationship in humanity. God being the pillar of truth down the center. Satan, who's the adversary, and humanity cycling around God. Okay? And now that I'm thinking about it, it actually might be humanity going straight up and down, and God and Satan warping around humanity. So that might be a better way of explaining it. So, let's recap real quick. This is the equation, all right? Written with a fraction and an outcome, right? 2 inputs, 1 output. The input, the cause and the effect. The output is the outcome, is the creation. Creators, creation. Creator, adversary, creation. Makes sense, right? So, I'm going to direct your attention lastly to this over here, where I try to wrap everything together. 9, which is represented by the Y in this depiction, by the sun in this depiction, and by the highest dimension, the crown chakra, and heaven in this depiction. What I'll explain the 9 as is 9 represents God, the source, the divine. 9 is the I am. 9 is the eternal cosmic presence at the highest dimension. Okay? Ehyeh. God, right? At the highest dimension. But it also represents, because we understand God is presence at the highest dimension, we are made in the image of God. Therefore, enlightenment, or to put it biblically, to be led by the Spirit, to have the Holy Spirit dwelling within your flesh, to be born again, to be enlightened, to reach nirvana. Those are the 9 inside of the Euclidean space. And when I say inside of the Euclidean space, I simply mean the 3rd dimension, where we are bound, right? The 6, which is the Ouroboros, the cyclical cycle, right? Ego, the effect, represents Satan, evil inclination, separation from God. And what is separation from God? What is sin? Sin is missing the mark, to miss the mark. What is the mark? The mark is God. All right? So we're missing the mark already just being human. All right? Because we were born into sin, right? Identity is another thing that the 6 represents. Because without identity, without identification, there is no cycle. There's just presence. Now we're starting to see, if you are just present, there is no cycle. Because you're just here. You're just in presence. You're just in God. You're with God. You know, the Bible talks about the living God. Right? Meaning, as I'm alive right here, God is. Right? For all I know, God could be sitting here with me. God could be speaking through me. But what does that mean? That doesn't mean that I'm losing my fucking mind or I'm going crazy. All that means is I am present. And because I am present, I'm not speaking of my own tongue. I'm speaking of the tongue of the observer. Who is the observer? Because it's not me. I am not the observer. God is the observer. And because of God, through Jesus Christ's grace, through God's grace, because of my faith in God, through his grace, I become. I am. I am not the Father. I am Eric. Right? It's either going to make sense or it's not, right? If it doesn't, I don't know what else to tell you. The 3, all right? The 3 is the outcome, all right? The manifestation of source and separation, which it's a paradox. It's a paradox, right? How can I be God and Satan at the same time? That's humanity. We are a living paradox, and it's so beautiful. It's gorgeous, right? The number 3 represents humans. The physical manifestation of the source energy filtered through the ego, manifested as human existence. To be present, to be born again, to have the Spirit dwelling inside of you is not something you can say, I have the Spirit inside of me. Because the moment that you claim to have the Spirit inside of you, it is gone. The moment you claim to have the Spirit inside of you, it is gone. Why? Because you started a cycle. You're not present anymore. Dead to self and alive in Christ. I hope now, after watching this video, after thinking and listening to these topics, that you now have a better understanding as to how I believe the world works, how I believe spirituality works, how I believe the cosmic consciousness works, how I believe God works. I don't claim to have the answers. I don't claim to not have the answers. I'm walking, I'm speaking, and I'm listening. And at times that I feel like talking, I talk. And when I feel like recording a video, here we are. When you feel like watching a video, here you are. So yeah. Pretty cool shit. Pretty cool shit in my opinion. Pretty cool stuff in my opinion. I really like this stuff. It's really cool to me. But this is how I understand it. This is how I understand it to be. And I don't consider myself a Christian. I don't consider myself anything. I consider myself a human. A human that is fascinated and also terrified of that of which we call God. And I appreciate your time. I appreciate your attention. I hope you learned something. If you didn't learn anything, I hope this just confirmed stuff for you. I hope that maybe it could bring some clarity if you don't have clarity. Questions if you're looking for questions. But when it's all said and done, I know nothing, I am nothing, and I am nobody.